everyone, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we're reacting to Film Theory. I saw the FNAF 2 movie before it came out. This is basically a guess from the trailer, any hints and clues that were given from it, and any other source, mainly from Scott Coffin and so on. And yeah, basically, it's all this information that Film Theory has developed and got and analyzed and theorized to come up with the possible scenario on how the movie is going to be portrayed. Is it going to be accurate? Who's to say? I can't say for sure. We're gonna have to wait till FNAF 2 comes out, but to a degree, I think there were some parts on the part where trying to solve what the FNAF movie was going to be like before it came out was kind of on point. I mean, not exactly, but it had similarities, basically. But yeah, that is the point made on that part. So here we are, going to go over what we have so far when it comes to FNAF 2, and try to get a rough estimate on what the movie is going to be like. But yeah, with this all said, there's, I don't know, nothing really left to say. But yeah. Anyway, hope you enjoy this reaction video. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe to support the channel and all that. Notification button to be notified immediately when the video comes out. If there's any videos you'd like to recommend that I should react to, put it in the comments section below and I'll react to it as soon as possible. And the link to this video is going to be down in the description below, so be sure to give Film Theory some love and support for the video that they made. Now with this all said, let's get right into this.
The teaser trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has finally dropped, and it managed to pack so much about its plot into just 50 seconds. Enough to solve this movie months before it's out.
We'll see.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that always comes back. Just like you can always come back by hitting that subscribe button. So, clever. Loyal theorists, the time has come. Five Nights at Freddy's is coming back to theaters this year. We're truly in the end game now, and the marketing for the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie has started up, with our first big look into the film coming with its official teaser trailer. Now, obviously, FNAF is a huge part of theorist history. I mean, it feels like we've done literally hundreds of videos about this franchise over at our sister location Game Theory. But the films are an entirely different beast, an entirely different timeline to theorize about. Matt trusted me to take on franchises like this as the film theorist. He trusted me to do our very first theory predicting the first movie because he was in it. So it's time to do the same with FNAF 2. In the past couple of weeks, Tom and I have sat down and really put our heads together to figure out what the heck is going on here. Like, clearly this movie is taking cues from the FNAF 2 game, but that was a prequel to the first game, and this is clearly a sequel. What are the consequences?
That is kinda true when you think about it. When it comes down to FNAF 2, it's a prequel. It's basically in the past. But now, it's not in this case. Unless we're going to get elements of, Dream Theory, where all the stuff we have seen that involves a lot of people were past events, and this place that they're going to is an abandoned, basically abandoned pizzeria. At this case, I guess. At the very least. But from what I'm seeing, it's not likely the case. Since, I don't know, it didn't really seem to be that case, but then again, it was like a teaser trailer. Only 50 seconds. Compared to a 1 minute and 30 trailer. Because I think that's how long trailers usually are, right? Probably. Maybe. I can't remember on the top of my head, basically. But this is an interesting thing to go on about. Because for the FNAF 2 movie, it's not in the past. It's more in the present. And the events of this is coming after FNAF 1. The FNAF 1 movie. Which is interesting, to say the least, because that could lead to some different case scenarios. Because it could take some elements from FNAF 3 without us even knowing it. But I don't know if they will do that for sure. I mean, for FNAF 3, it was just the nightmares and... Not nightmares, the phantoms and Springtrap. With Springtrap being the only real animatronic. This is a confusing part.
Of that change, and what does it mean for the story? Well, it might not look like we have a lot to work with to figure that out. I mean, this trailer is barely 45 seconds long. Can we really crack this movie wide open with just that? Well, we figured out more with less, and I think we've done it, loyal theorists. By looking at this teaser, comparing it to what we know from the game series, adding in our speculation from the fallout of the first movie, and using the rules and laws of filmmaking in horror series like this, I believe I've solved where this movie is headed months before it's out. And not only that, but I think we can get a pretty good idea of where the inevitable FNAF 3 movie is headed to. So grab your spring-lock suits, loyal theorists, as we take a bite out of this teaser. So, okay, first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page after this first movie, just in case you need a little refresher. And I mean, it has been a couple of years at this point, so understandable. Five Nights at Freddy's was the story of Mike Schmidt, a down-on-your-luck young man taking care of his kid sister Abby as he takes on a job as the night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Mike is haunted by guilt for the death of his little brother Garrett, who was murdered by the serial killer William Afton, who also so happens to be the owner of Freddy's and killed several other children at the pizzeria years ago, and now those spirits haunt the restaurant and want Abby to become one of them. So Mike teams up with Afton's daughter Vanessa to take down Afton, save Abby, and hopefully find some peace for the ghost children. Well, at least until this sequel hits, right? Now, with that out of the way, let's go through this teaser shot by shot and frame by frame. We open on a poster for Freddy Fazbear's. The glass on this poster display is broken, which may mean that it's the same poster we see in the first movie. If you don't remember, Max's brother and his gang of hooligans smashed and shattered this glass when they broke into Freddy's in that movie. Not sure if it's exactly the same poster, but it probably doesn't matter since I doubt we'll be spending a significant amount of time here anyway. Regardless, we do know that we are going back to the original pizzeria in some way. We know this thanks to some of our fellow FNAF tubers who did a set visit during the filming of this movie. Here we see that the studio rebuilt a facade of the front of the restaurant, but not the whole thing, so I doubt we're going to be spending a ton of time inside of it. Either way, this is just an establishing shot for us and the teaser, so let's move on. Next, we see a shot of an endoskeleton turning on. If you don't know, these are the mechanical parts inside of the animatronics that let them move and work. We actually see some of them getting worked on in the previous movie, but it's also worth noting that this one from the teaser, it isn't the same type. This is an Endo 02, a more advanced type of endoskeleton that we first saw in the FNAF 2 game. And I mean, hey, that makes sense. Like, it's the FNAF 2 movie, of course they're taking cues from the FNAF 2 game. Anyway, you can tell this thanks to the curved mouth on this one. The original endoskeletons in the first movie had squared off mouths. And there's a voiceover for William Afton welcoming us back to Freddy's.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
Oh, I didn't notice that in all honesty. So, the endo we saw during the teaser was a FNAF 2 endo, made for the toy animatronics, if I'm correct. Interesting. Okay, didn't know that. Glad to know this information now. Felt like, now I'm feeling like a bit of an idiot for not noticing that when it came to the trailer.
It's a nice meta touch to get us back into this world, but in-universe, this is likely a recording or a flashback to when one of the restaurants is having its big opening. Since Afton is welcoming us back, I'm guessing that this is the sister location. It just seems more relevant than, say, the original location undergoing some sort of renovation and then reopening just for the sake of it. Either way, I expect that Afton's ghost will be using this audio to great effect. Like, if this is an actual audio recording, I could see him using it to torment Mike and the others. It would just be super creepy movie, and I'm all for it. Suddenly, we see ourselves in some sort of circus or fair. It's almost certainly Freddy Fazbear themed, since we see kids in the background dressed up as characters from Freddy's. And there are also some themed attractions using those characters here. I'm almost certain that this is going to be an event called FazFest. We know that this is likely going to be a big part of the story, since those YouTubers I mentioned earlier, like Daco, visited the set and found posters for this event. Now, this is interesting because the idea of a circus or of a carnival or fair is a big talking point in the FNAF community right now. I briefly mentioned this in my last FNAF movie theory, but in the lore of the Freddy's games, there was an event called Fall Fest that ran from around 1970 until at least 1983. It's a huge part of the history of these characters in this world, and Scott seems to be bringing these ideas into the film universe in a new way. Let's be real, that makes sense with the way the movies have been streamlining and combining the expansive lore of the series, so yeah. The next thing we see is Abby pulling up to the second Freddy's location on her bike. This is the sister location, so to speak. So there are actually a few things we can gather from this shot. First off, if we look at both the state of the restaurant and the surrounding area, this location has been abandoned for a long time. The outside of the building is run.
Not wrong. It's old. It's been there for a while. Rust, wheat, tumbleweed stuff, plants overgrowing and extending to parts that shouldn't be going to, so on and so forth. Paint shop looks faded, a lot faded, and yeah, basically it looks like something you haven't been to for more than 2 decades at the very least. Because if it's a decade, it'd probably just be like still on the wall. Well, probably 2 would be the ground. Or maybe, well, let's just say it's around a decade or more.
Down, and the parking lot is overgrown with weeds and grass and the like. We can actually see this more clearly in those behind-the-scenes set visits from the FNAF tubers. Oh, and funnily enough, this building is actually in the same parking lot as the facade of the first Freddy's location that they built for this movie. But just so everyone's aware, that doesn't mean that they're going to be in the same location or even anywhere close to each other in the actual movie. Film productions do this sort of thing all the time, reusing sets and locations and either changing the camera angles or background details to make them seem like different locations. It just saves on production costs, which is almost certainly what's happening here since this is a relatively low-budget horror film. Anyway, the second thing that we can gather from this shot of Abby, well, given Abby's expression here, she's likely never been to this location before. So, she's likely been drawn here by something. And I think I know what that thing is. Right after this in the teaser, we see a shot of Mike finding a note taped to his door, reading, "Gone to fix my friends." This is probably from Abby and is explaining why she's left and gone to the sister location. The friends that she's talking about here in the note are probably the ghosts in the original animatronics. If you remember, Abby was super close to them in the previous film, enough so that they wanted her to be like them. But they seemed to end the last movie in a little bit of peace. So this note tells us that they're still in contact with Abby and that something has gone wrong since the last movie. Now, that thing that's gone wrong could be a lot of things. Being trapped in new animatronic bodies, being tortured by Afton's ghost, but another big option? Perhaps that AI has gone a little rogue in these animatronics and is somehow controlling or hurting the spirits. Anyway, we might also know how they're talking to Abby. During one of his charity live streams, Daco revealed an image of a Fast Talker toy provided to him by the film's production, with a screen on it reading, "You there?" Basically, if I had to guess, this looks like a way that the ghosts are communicating with the living characters. Now, this thing is strange because nothing like it has ever really appeared in the games. The closest we get is Afton's walkie-talkie in Sister Location, which he uses to communicate with the crying child. But even that is weird and different than what we're seeing here. The ghosts in the film seem to be able to just talk to Abby and communicate with other characters like Mike through their dreams. So perhaps this Fast Talker is a way for them to do so without needing them to be asleep. We then see a conversation between Vanessa and Mike, where Vanessa is warning him that
they're out there, Mike.
She's likely talking about the animatronics, which we'll get to in just a sec. But the big things here? Well, first off, Vanessa has completed completely recovered from her hospital stay, so I guess perhaps she was not a robot as much as Matt might have wanted her to be. But the other big thing here is that she's not wearing her cop uniform, either here or in any other shot in the teaser. Don't get me wrong, she could still be a cop and just be taking some time off or something, but this tells me that she...
That is kind of true. No matter what, even after you recover, there is a timestamp that you can't really be at work until you're completely and totally healed. Back to physical, top physical condition, that is, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it could be something else.
She's either stepped back from that role or has been let go from the force for some reason. We see another shot of her holding a gun later in the teaser, so she might still be on the force, but I wouldn't be surprised if her connection to a serial killer was somehow revealed and compromised her job. But anyway, why was she warning Mike that they're out there? Well, that's because of the next few shots that we see here. Yeah, we immediately see what looks like Toy Bonnie peeking in through a curtain into a window of a house. Shortly afterwards, there are a couple of other shots of Toy Bonnie lifting up some sort of needle as if he's about to attack somebody, and then a shot of a couple cowering in fear inside of a living room. These two shots are back to back, and though trailer editing doesn't mean that they're 100% connected, I'd be shocked if they weren't. Big picture here, though, is that Toy Bonnie and the other toy animatronics, as we're about to see, are no longer confined to the pizzeria, and that's a huge deal. See, the animatronics going out and about isn't really a thing that we ever see in the game series. The closest thing I can think of is in Sister Location when Innard leaves the Sister Location wearing Michael as a skin suit. But that's not nearly the same as the animatronics just like straight up roaming the streets like we see here. This is extra strange too because it's established in the series that this would be pretty difficult for them. Glamrock Freddy from Security Breach
Yeah, that's actually kind of true. Well, the explanation on how the animatronics, older animatronic models are not allowed to leave is a bit vague. Very vague, mind you. It was, I think, mentioned that because they were killed in the location, they can't exactly leave. At least until we saw Help Wanted 1. And saw that, well, for Foxy, he needed multiple batteries at multiple parts of his body to even be function. So there's that. So if Foxy needs that much power to keep his suit running, then it would make sense for the other animatronics as well. And when it comes to Henry's, they're attached to like a battery. So yeah, at best and worst, you just need to make sure that you put in a new battery for those animatronics. Though it may come for, that explanation might work for any of the normal endoskeletons and all that. I don't know how the Sister Location animatronics are powered, the puppets powered, and that's really it. Because if we go to the Springlock suits, they don't really have power. They're just literal suits that you can actually control. So, yeah.
Explains that if the animatronics leave the Pizzaplex, they will eventually run out of power. Some endings have Freddy using a car battery to stay active because of this. And it's not just the Security Breach animatronics either, but in the Week Before novel, a story set in the week before the FNAF 1 video game, one of the main goals of the original animatronics is to be able to leave the pizzeria. To do this, they overcharge themselves so they don't need to charge themselves again, at least for a while. These toy animatronics might need to recharge at some point, giving our heroes a ticking clock that they can outlast as the animatronics slowly have to power down. Perhaps over a series of days. So basically, they'd have to survive 5 nights at Freddy's, or rather, 5 nights outside of Freddy's. Of course, this scene with Toy Bonnie isn't the only scene throughout the teaser with the animatronics outside of the pizzeria. Later on, we see a man played by classic character actor Wayne Knight peering through a closet window in a school. He sees Toy Chica on the other side before she pulls him through the window, presumably to his death. We also see her feet in a room similar to this, but likely before or after she's pulled this man.
Oh my gosh, I just realized the location this guy's in. They're at a school. Oh my gosh. I didn't expect that one. So maybe they're after Abby too. It would make sense now that I think about it.
Into the room, as well as a shot of Toy Chica opening some sort of garage with her hands. There's also shots of Mangle breaking in through a window in a house, another one of Mangle crashing into a car windshield, and then someone getting attacked and pulled up to the ceiling by Mangle. It looks like that last scene probably also takes place in this school, and another shot shortly after this sees another new character, a blonde girl, looking up and screaming. Given the angle of this shot looking down at this girl, this is likely from Mangle's point of view, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's immediately connected with the shot of Mangle pulling the other guy up to the ceiling. If I were to guess, this is likely a scene similar to the first movie where a bunch of side characters are killed to show just how dangerous these new animatronics are. I wouldn't be surprised if these characters go to school with Abby and are bullies or something similarly unlikable. We also see another shot of Mike, Abby, and Vanessa in what looks like an office in the school or some random house, looking terrified. So I'm betting that this school sequence is actually a big set piece for the movie. We then see a man's hand pressing a Showtime button to start an animatronic show. This is likely at the sister location since we see a different Showtime button in the first film, and that one's on a wall, not a podium. Next up, we have a shot of a silhouetted man in a hallway as doors fly open. This is actually a really effective shot, in my opinion. It's very creepy. This man is almost certainly William Afton. His build just looks a lot like actor Matthew Lillard, and we know that he's going to be in this movie somewhere. I'm gonna say that this is either a dream sequence where he's haunting Mike and Vanessa, or it's literally his ghost haunting the two. Also worth noting that there are 6 doors in this scene, perhaps representing the 5 kids that Afton murdered from the restaurant, and Mike and Abby's brother Garrett, whom he also killed. This is likely setting up or reminding us of Afton's connection with Mike and Garrett, which will be explored later in the series.
Okay.
Actually, while we're on the subject, I gotta say, I think it's surprising the lack of Afton that we actually get in this teaser. Other than some voiceover and this scene here, the only other hint we get is a shot of Spring Bonnie's hand picking up a knife. I wouldn't be shocked if he's just not as present in this film as he was in the first one. I mean, it would be weird for him to come back as a big twist, third act villain when that's exactly what he did in the first movie, right? The time spent with Afton here in this second movie, in my opinion, would be better spent setting him up as a larger villain in the third film, but I digress. Now we get a shot of a large Balloon Boy animatronic, eyes glowing as he activates inside one of the pizzerias. You can tell that it's that because of the checkerboard pattern here in the back of the shot. It's just classic FNAF imagery. Balloon Boy actually returns here from the first movie where he was just like a strange, haunted figurine. Talking about a glow-up, am I right? So the fact that we're getting a Balloon Boy animatronic isn't that surprising. I mean, he was in the FNAF 2 game after all. But an interesting connection here that we put together? Well, in Tom's very first FNAF theory as host of Game Theory, he talked about the Fall Fest and how that makes Balloon Boy make way more sense. Like, a guy holding balloons doesn't really fit super well with animal animatronics, right? But it would make sense at something like a carnival or a circus. A character walking around handing out balloons to kids and visitors. The fact that the movie seems to be rolling the idea of the circus in here with Faz Fest just really makes that work even more. And finally, we hear Afton yell Showtime before we see Toy Freddy walking through Faz Fest. If you notice, there are tons of other cosplayers here in the background, and it's just a really cool touch. Now then, that's all of the shots from the trailer, but what can we learn here by reading between the lines? And can we look back at some of our previous speculation and see how it lines up? Well, the first big flag that Matt and I planted in our speculation about the rest of the FNAF movie series was that Garrett, Mike's brother that Afton killed, was going to replace Charlie as the spirit possessing the puppet. If you don't remember, the puppet was an animatronic introduced in FNAF 2, so again, it would make sense for them to show up in this movie. Our big reasoning was that this would give Mike even more of a connection to Afton, offer some real emotional stakes to the other ghosts in the series, and that the puppet was teased in the credits of the first movie, spelling out "Come Find Me." Go check out our full theory talking about that if you want all the details. Well, this teaser gives us another big indication that the puppet is going to be a big player in the rest of this story, whether it's in this movie or another sequel. During some of Afton's voiceover in this teaser, we can hear the music box used to keep the puppet at bay in the FNAF 2 game playing in the background.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
So yeah, keep your eyes and ears peeled for more references to this and any indication that this version of the puppet is Garrett, because that is absolutely an arc that they're following here. A prediction that I'm a little less confident in, though, is my analysis of the script pages that Scott released. If you don't remember, last year in honor of the 10-year anniversary of FNAF, Scott released 4 pages of the script for FNAF 2. but the catch was that only one of them was real. If you want an in-depth look at these pages and an analysis of them, go check out my theory from last year, but the one that I thought was going to be the real one was this one, which talked about haunted plushies and Mike coming to the realization that he'd need to burn them. At the time, I was confident that this was pointing to the toy animatronics being the villains of this movie and the need to destroy them. But after this teaser, I'm just less sure about that. I mean, hey, you can't get them all right all the time. See, Abby is the one encouraging Mike to burn the toys in this page, but that doesn't line up with what we see here in the teaser, where it looks like she's the one who wants to help save the plushies. So, what does that mean for the pages? Well, if this one is incorrect, then I think the fourth page is. This one is from the cold open of the movie, describing a man taking his children into what we believe to be one of the pizzerias and into a secret room underneath its carousel. This page is an entirely realistic option. It actually came down to this one and the plushie burning page, but the reason I didn't go with it originally was because some of the characters present in the script probably shouldn't have been here. But now, especially with how the FNAF movie franchise is mixing and matching elements from across the entire game series and timeline, I'm less sure about that. So,
that's a fair assumption, in all honesty. Plus, we did get a scene at the end where something like that was involved, but I think that was more of like a video, like a video introduction, training video. Yep, I think that's it. But I guess that would technically be it. And this one, I guess it has that kind of element. For all we know, we might go to the beginning and just generally have this kind of scene, and then we're gonna just get back to the present. Maybe. I mean, it sounds possible if I think about it that way. But I don't know. We only have a teaser trailer, not an actual trailer, so I guess until we have an actual trailer or something like that, that's it. So, it could be this one or it could be the other one. Just gonna have to wait and see. But with the teaser trailer, it does show signs of this one being the correct one. That's for sure.
Okay, if this page is legit, then that begs the question, who is this guy? This man leading these kids into some level below the pizzeria? Well, the obvious answer would be Afton, and that this is some sort of flashback, but the page really implies that these kids are his actual children. We don't see Vanessa here in this flashback, so I don't think that this is Afton. So, who is it? Well, I believe that it's the person who's taken over Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and is the entire reason this second movie is happening. Here, hear me out. So, I'm pretty sure that the shot of Toy Freddy walking through FazFest is set in the film's modern day and not during a flashback. Why do I think that? Well, think back to those set visit videos we talked about earlier. In those, Dawko and the other FNAF tubers found posters for FazFest on the facade of the rundown buildings. If this FazFest was set in the past, or during a flashback, the building shouldn't be nearly this rundown. So, okay, FazFest is set during the modern day, but what does that matter? Well, think about this. The last time that we saw Afton, he was dying in his Springlock suit and his soul was being tortured by Golden Freddy. So, if FazFest is set in the current day, and if Afton, the person who owns the Freddy Fazbear franchise, is dead, who is putting on FazFest? Well, if I were a betting man, just like in FNAF 3 where some third party came in and bought all of the Freddy Fazbear assets to make a horror attraction, someone came in and bought all of Afton's assets after he died, and they're trying to relaunch the Freddy IP with this FazFest. That is the guy from the cold open page. Oh, and as an aside, this could also explain why Abby feels like she needs to go help her friends. If a new group or company has come in and bought up all of the Freddy Fazbear assets and are trying to relaunch things, they may have taken parts from the previous animatronics to sort of repair or enhance the toy animatronics. And if they mixed and matched parts from the different animatronics, that could leave the spirits feeling mixed up and confused. Similar to how the Funtime animatronics from the games were built using remnants, which just jumbled up their spirits. If you don't know what remnant is, bless you, you sweet summer child. It's a long story and not super relevant to this theory today, so just don't worry about it.
Yeah. yeah, going into the subject of Remnant is kind of insane. Um, it just, for those that don't even know what it is to this point, and I'd be surprised how someone doesn't know, it's a complicated thing that if you try to dig too deep into it, it's gonna put you through mental loops, physical loops, not just mental loops. The point that you just start questioning everything and start losing a bit of your sanity when it comes to the subject. Trust me, everyone has done it. Everyone has that problem when it comes to Remnant. It is a questionable thing. Not gonna lie.
Anyway, I believe that is the underlying storyline of this film. Someone new has come in to buy up Freddy, and they stumbled into something way darker than they anticipated. They somehow activated the toy animatronics, angered the ghosts, and now they're on a killing rampage through this town. So Mike, Abby, and Vanessa have to stop the animatronics while helping to save the ghosts, all while they're haunted by the memory of Afton and Garrett. Perhaps literally. So that's a lot, and while that's everything I think we can glean about this movie from this teaser, I do believe we can sit down and look at what they've shown us here and get an idea of where future FNAF movies are going to. See, the very fact that we see the animatronics out and about, in neighborhoods and carnivals and schools in this movie means that the FNAF film franchise is following an arc traditional for these sorts of horror films. With every single film, they need to be going bigger and better than the last, from one building to a larger neighborhood and a school in FNAF's case. And that tells us a lot about the stories they're going to adapt for the third film. We've talked about this in previous FNAF movie theories before, about how a third FNAF movie likely isn't adapting FNAF 3 because it isn't as exciting a game to transfer to the big screen. Like, if they kept things super faithful, it would just be like Josh Hutcherson and William Afton hanging out in an old building for an hour and a half. It's not exactly riveting cinema. And after watching this teaser, I think Scott and the filmmakers have realized this too, because they already seem to be incorporating a lot of the more interesting details from the FNAF 3 game into this movie, with someone new coming in to restart Freddy. Because they're already likely using that plot point from the FNAF 3 game, I doubt that they'd reuse it in the FNAF 3 movie, so they'll need to do something else. FNAF 4 and being stuck in a dream makes even less sense, because it's so heavy and weird and isn't the escalation that the filmmakers are probably looking for. Right, a dream just feels smaller instead of going bigger. That's the natural arc of these sorts of films, and why eventually we get movies like Jason X where they jumped the shark so high they ended up in space. So think that through. We went from being in one location in FNAF 1, the pizzeria, where most of the hauntings happen in a single place. Once you actually leave Freddy Fazbear's, the characters were more or less safe for the rest of the movie. Now we're in FNAF 2, where the threats and hauntings have escalated outwards. The animatronics are no longer confined to a single location. They're out and about, attacking people in a wider set of locations like in a neighborhood or at a school. So what would a third movie need to do to go even bigger than that? My first thought was that maybe, hey, they'll pull a Jurassic Park 2 and we'll end up in a city of some sort. And then I thought, nah, that'd be kinda dumb. Like, what is Scott gonna do here? Pull out the old Plushies Take Manhattan script? No, man, no. They could do something similar to Pizzeria Simulator, but I'm also skeptical of that simply because they don't really have enough characters to do the whole gather and burn it all down like we see in that game. 2 movies worth of animatronics.
That is a big point. Now, outside of location and involving a location and well, focusing on the outside for a bit, but keeping the main focus at well, the pizzeria basically. So what would you do then? Well, in a weird way, this is reminding me of the trilogy of the FNAF book trilogy. You know, the Silver Eyes, the Fourth Closet and whatnot. So maybe it's going to follow that element a bit. Because I think in the second book it involved more of a wider out like environment. At least that's what I think. I can't recall the books that well. I might have to look into them again. But let's see. if that's the case, what would you do if you involve a city, outside environments that aren't safe anymore? You realize they can leave and they can get to these places. So what would be the next one? Well, I guess it would technically be maybe one location? Yeah, maybe. It could just be the main focus of one location, but it has a lot of uh, stuff to adventure through. And with that adventuring through, it could show a lot more characters. Like uh, tests, projects, schematics for ideas that never fully came out, and whatnot. Yeah, I
Just
let's hear
isn't
the
enough.
rest before I
So,
continue.
what's the next logical step then? Well, say it with me, security breach. I mean, yeah, we
Oh,
saw that coming. We already have Vanessa as a main character in these films. A large mall or building like a pizzaplex is a natural escalation for these sorts of horror film franchises. This would let us introduce another new slate of animatronic characters that fit the cast that we've established in these movies, and the bones of the security breach story would allow for closure for Mike,
okay.
Abby, and Vanessa. They could end the story by burning everything down and releasing the spirits of the dead kids, all while moving on from the trauma and experience themselves. Plus, it would allow for this FNAF movie trilogy to hit all of the biggest and most recognizable parts of the FNAF games, while leaving other, more out there projects like Help Wanted or the novels open for adaptation down the line should the movie franchise be successful enough to continue. It all just makes too much sense, and that's why I'm planting my flag here now. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is going to be a security breach adaptation. And hey, maybe if it does well enough, one day we'll get far enough along in this series to adapt FNAF World. I actually think that would legitimately be pretty cool. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory.
Okay, for one, the whole FNAF world, I can see that being more like a children's cartoon movie. It has the elements that remind you of a child cartoon film, so it might be better to do it for that if that ever comes to tuition. Make it something for the kids, well, mainly younger audience, but also something entertaining for the older audience. Something like that. Now, I don't think he's wrong about that, but it might be even bigger. Because imagine this. Sure, we get like the seemingly normal pizzaplex and all this and all that. But that doesn't feel like the biggest point. Sure, it's great and all that, but what if they add more of the other stuff? Like the pizzeria, not pizzeria, Pizzaplex has a lot of stuff going everywhere. And it has a fair bit of underground stuff. What if in the underground they have more stuff? That is to say, like, as I mentioned before, past projects that William Afton was doing, such as the makings of the Nightmare animatronics and not even using them because they weren't ready, they weren't properly prepared, and they couldn't be easily controlled. And then in this third film, they're going to be used just for not for the purpose or goals like the other animatronics, but to eliminate. That would make sense. And along with that, it would add probably projects from sister location where we get the fun time animatronics as well. Probably like we get a bit more of the backstory and the main goal that William Afton had before everything goes to literal HELL hockey stick. That's something that I can see happening. And then after that bit, probably some old animatronics, like before, like like the big success was the original 4 animatronics, and they had some prototypes and all this and all that, which would be the 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 critters, the frog, I can't remember them all on the top of my head. There is a lot of animatronics, and I haven't been seeing FNAF in a while, so can you blame me for not remembering them all on the top of my head? Okay, I can remember this. I can remember these animatronics, but you get the point what I'm trying to say, right? Using the fun times, the nightmares, and even the animatronics that Henry made being a part of it. It would make sense, right? I like to say so. Yeah, I'd like to say so, actually. Because to me, that makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, so what else could happen? Well, those are the ones that only come to mind. The mediocre melodies. Yes, that's it. The mediocre melodies. Mr. Hippo, Happy Frog, Pig Patch, Ned the Bear, and Orville, the elephant one. That would make sense to add them to like the 3rd film, right? And then burn them all down as they escape. Maybe it makes sense to me, having this big labyrinth and all that, and bam, you literally got one whole location, but it's focusing on multiple parts that are big, labyrinth, and it has so many parts that it can keep someone in suspense if you can do it right. At least to me, then it would make sense. And on the upper part and on the underground part is another set of animatronics. It makes sense to me. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this 3rd part. But when it comes to the 2nd part, it doesn't sound like a solid idea. We could make a guess, an estimate, and say, oh, it could be this, it could be that, but the way that the teaser trailer was, it didn't really go and give a lot of information that says, oh, this one script that we thought isn't it. It might be this one, but it doesn't seem right either, because it has elements that just doesn't make sense. Like I said, it doesn't make sense. So basically, I feel like the best option is to wait for an official trailer to see what's going on, but that could take like a month or 2, maybe 3, somewhere around that time limit. But it does lead to this. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button down below. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. I like to hear your opinion on this matter, because this is an interesting thing to think about. It has a lot of guessing, no doubt. But tell me what your thoughts are on a 3rd, for like a 3rd film. Honestly, I feel like it's something to really think about, because without that, they are going to do a 3rd film. I think I have the right idea, but I just might be like overthinking it, and I might just be expecting a lot into the 3rd film. That just might be me. But yeah, this all said, hope you all enjoy, and all this and all that. Be sure to give Film Theory some love and support for the video that they made, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.